I'm sure you've heard all the predictions of Bitcoin going to 25,000 to 20,000 to 14,000 or even $9,000. I'm sure you've heard it by now. However, in this video, I'm going to give you 8 reasons as to why Bitcoin is about to take off and the bottom is already in. You do not want to go anywhere on this. Now, I'm not going to edit this video and put all these different cuts in there. Instead, I'm going to give you straight information in order so you guys can understand the entire philosophy why I believe the bottom is already in. So let's go ahead into our list. Number 1, the first thing I want to go over is the funding. In case you're not familiar what this is, the funding rates, when it is above this line, that means that the longs are paying shorts to have the position open. Now, if the funding is below the middle line, that means the shorts are paying the longs to keep those shorts open. Okay, that's overall what that means. Now, so whenever you have, whenever the funding is negative, that means there's a lot of bearish sentiment in the market. Whenever it is above the line, that means there's a lot of bullish sentiment. However, I went back onto Bitcoin and annotated some of the best buying opportunities in Bitcoin. You can see this one right here, right here, right here, right here, and right here, right? You can notice the funding rate for each one of these is in the negative, okay? Now, once it's in the negative, it usually results in some sort of a short squeeze that will pop it to the upside. And you guys can see what happens here. So negative funding rate pops to the upside. Negative funding rate pops to the upside, okay? Same thing over here. Negative funding rate popped to the upside. It did reverse down, but again, negative funding rate popped to the upside. Then, of course, this massive, massive drop. If you can see here, we do not have negative funding rate prior to the drop. However, once the drop has happened, then we get the massive negative funding rate and we get the massive bull run after this point, okay? And the last opportunity is right here where it's also negative. So if you look at the current price action, what do we have right now? We have a negative funding rate, okay? Traditionally, as you see, this is a great buying opportunity whenever there is a negative funding rate on Bitcoin, okay? And that's number 1 reason why I am absolutely not bearish on Bitcoin. So let's go ahead and dive into the second one. And this one is going to be over what is called a bullish divergence. Now, in order for me to explain what a bullish divergence is and what the significance is of it, I first have to show you guys what a bullish divergence even is. So this is a bullish divergence. Here's a bearish divergence. A bearish divergence, when the price is going higher, but the RSI, the relative strength index, is going lower. That means that although the price is rising, the RSI, the strength of that rise, is actually decreasing. That means that the bulls, although they're winning the fight, they're not winning as hard. And when the bulls start losing that fight, the bears are going to kick in and put it into overdrive, okay? And that's what happens. So let's go ahead and dive into Bitcoin. I'm going to show you guys what happened on the weekly chart of Bitcoin here at the top. Let's take off the log chart for a second. So we are going to annotate all of the tops of this range just to make it very clear and demonstrate where these divergences are at. Trend line, horizontal, perfect. So on divergences, they only count the close of the candles and not the wick. So we're only going to include the candle closes. So this is a high, right? This is another high. That fair? Sure. So here is another high, and here is once again another high, okay? So these are our 4 highs that were made on Bitcoin. So what we're going to do is go down to our RSI, and we are going to annotate on here where those RSI, where the RSI is at when these highs happen. One right here, one right here, one right here. I missed one, didn't I? Oh, and right there. My bad, I missed it. And this right here. Okay, so as this RSI, despite the fact the price is rising, as you guys can clearly see, the RSI is actually dropping relative to the price. So even though it's making higher high on RSI or on the price, the RSI is actually dropping. This means that the bulls are losing strength despite the fact they're losing the battle. And what happens when when it starts curving downward? Well, we know what happens because we had to live through this. This is our massive May candle that just utterly collapsed the market, right? You guys remember this. Okay, this is what happens when a bearish divergence plays out. It gets very, very violent. Okay, this is a weekly bearish divergence. Okay, so now that you guys understand what that is, now we're going to do the exact same thing, except we're going to do it on the daily chart for Bitcoin in the current situation. So we just went over what a bullish or a bearish divergence is. So now let's go over what we already went over the bearish, so let's go over the bullish now. So a bullish is when you have a drop in price. However, the indicator, or the RSI in this instance, is actually increasing. Okay, drop in price, increase in RSI. Let's go ahead and dive in and see what that looks like. So same exact thing. We're going to annotate all of the price bottoms, only the candle closes. So there's one, there's two. If you zoom in, you can see we have another one right here, another one right here, another one right here, and once again we have another candle close that was lower than the previous one. Okay, so now that we have that done, let's go ahead and get into our RSI and start doing the exact same thing we did on the top for the top of the bear market, or the top of the bull market. We're going to do the exact same thing for over here. So that is right here, this one 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 right here. All right, this is not made a lower low yet, so because of that, we do not even include this in our divergence. However, although we make lower lows, the indicator is actually showing higher lows. That means that we have a bullish divergence on the daily chart of Bitcoin. We saw up here what 4 weekly divergences can do. Now, what happens when we have 6, I believe? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5. What happens when, 6. What happens when 6 daily divergences play out? Well, if they're a bullish divergence, you would expect it to pop to the upside. And that is my second reason why I'm super bullish on Bitcoin. Let's go to number 3. So number 3 is going to consist of this blue range that I've already drew out. And I'm going to demonstrate why I have it here in 1 second after I get this rid of it. Like I told you guys, I'm doing this live. I'm not going through and I'm not making any cuts, any of that stuff. You guys are seeing everything in this raw footage. So let's go ahead and dive into this. So this is our range, and we know it's our range because we have the low and the high from this drop. So you extend that out on now. However, I'm extending it out for both sides because you can see how it's actually on both sides of this becomes our range. You guys can see this pretty clearly. So on this range, that means the price is still, despite the current price action, we are still inside this range. Now, there is one moment where we left this range, and this is called a deviation from the range. However, deviations are actually bullish if they close back inside. So the only deviation we've had from this range is actually a bullish one. So right now, this still looks completely fine, guys. This looks completely fine because the last time that we've left this range was a deviation to the downside and we closed back above it. And now the next time should be a tap of the top side of the range, right? Just like we had over here. So the range overall structure is still absolutely intact, and don't let anyone say otherwise because it's right here. You guys can see this, the bottom of the capitulation candle to the retracement. We are still range bound. It's not over yet. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to go over is the Wycoff accumulation schematic number 1. You probably have seen this, and I'm going to tell you right now, I am not an expert in Wycoff patterns at all. However, if you look at this and dive into our daily chart on Bitcoin, it is uncanny, absolutely uncanny. And you have to acknowledge the fact that this looks extremely similar to it. So let's go ahead and dive in one by one and just go in and really show this. So first off, you have this that shoots down at the bottom. Well, we have that right here. Okay. Then we had the retracement. Oh, over here, retracement up. Now we dive back down, and this is the only part of this chart that is not absolutely perfect, because instead of this going below the capitulation candle, we actually stayed above it, and that is right here. Okay, so we did not make a lower low here. And if that means that this entire schematic is entirely invalidated because of that, okay, so be it. However, I have not seen anything that shows it as invalidated because we did not make a lower low here. Okay, so until I see something that shows it has been invalidated, I'm going to continue and say that it is still valid. Now we have a reversal back to the top of the top side of the range, which we have right here, and then we drop down for what's called the spring. You guys can see it right here. We come down, break below the previous low, have the spring. Then we come back up for the retest right here, which you guys see right here, okay? Now, what I believe we're currently doing is this movement right here, back in for another retest, which means then we will continue on to phase D and then eventually into phase E, all right? So even though I'm not an expert in Wycoff, guys, this looks extremely uncannily like what the current price action is, and until I see until this gets invalidated, I'm convinced. All right, I'm sorry guys, but this just looks way too good for me. So next thing we're gonna dive into is what's called the CME gaps. All right, and that was number 4. Now let's go to number 5. This is the Wycoff, or I'm sorry, this is the CME futures chart. What this means is that, or essentially, you have gaps in this chart because price action does not happen during the weekends because they're closed during the weekends. So between Friday and Monday, any price action that happens basically becomes a massive gap in the chart. Now, it's sort of a meme, but it also happens very often that whenever you have a gap, it does go back and refill it, just like up here. It came up here, created a gap, came back here and refilled that gap. So same thing. We have this CME gap that I've been watching for a little while, came up, came down and tested it, but we never actually filled it. However, if you come back up here, look at this. We have actually refilled that CME gap. Meme or not, it looks legitimate to me. So we have come down here, we have refilled that gap. So now the next gap that we have is right up here, and it would make sense to me that we continue back up and refill this gap. So CME gaps, got it. I know it sounds stupid, but they do play out a lot of the times, and I'm not just going to ignore it because it does seem like a very legitimate thing. So that's number 5 as to why I'm super bullish on Bitcoin. Number 6 is going to go back to the chart. And this time, we're going to talk about this triangle, okay? And this triangle, everyone's talking about the significance of it. And don't get me wrong, it looks extremely significant, all right? You have that trend line right there. You have this trend line right here. It created the triangle, and it broke down, or it broke up, and then it broke back down. Awesome. That looks very, very significant, and it's very hard to argue, right? Well, sort of, because we also had this triangle. Guys, remember this? Right? This triangle also played out, and it broke down, and it broke back up, right? Interesting, right? So if that one wasn't that significant, right? We have that one, we have this one. We also have, let me find it. This one, if I remember correctly, this one to there, and this one to there, right? Another triangle we also have played. Is that the one I was looking for? I can't remember exactly which one it was. I think it was here and here. The point is, guys, you can make a ton of triangles on here, and this thing has played out multiple times, and it's still range bound. Okay, it's still range bound. No matter how you want to look at this, this is still inside of this range. And until we leave this range, these triangles are just memes, guys. They're just ways for the short-term price action but they really don't mean that much, okay? And that's basically what I'm trying to go on here, guys. It's just not that significant. There's plenty of triangles that have been drawn on this chart over the last few weeks, and yeah, people are overanalyzing this price action when instead it's just a massive range, and don't forget that. All right. Now the next I'm going to go over is what's called volume profiling, and this is something that is not nearly talked about enough. Whenever you start to become a trader, you learn about volume and you understand how important it is. However, a lot of times traders will completely forget about volume and focus on the more complex stuff. But volume tells you a lot about whether or not the price action is significant or not. So the rule of thumb for volume is a rise in price on high volume is bullish. A rise in price on low volume is bearish. A drop in price on high volume is bearish, and a drop in price in low volume is actually bullish. Okay, so what that means is whenever it does go down, if there's not a lot of volume, that means that movement is not that significant. All right, and the other thing also applies. If the price is rising and it does not have that much volume, it also is not that significant. And those are the main things we're looking at. So on here, you guys can see this capitulation candle was very significant. It had extremely high volume. However, all of these other movements have had very low volume. All of it. This has all had very low volume. You had some volume here, but mostly it really wasn't, guys. Like, obviously, it wasn't that significant of a drop in the first place. Flatline, flatline, flatline. All of this is just chop. Just chop. Bull traps and bear traps left and right, right? The only significant volume spike that we have had on the 4-hour since 19 May has been this deviation from the range. Whenever it dropped down here, the only time we've had a high increase in volume was whenever this deviation happened, and it shot it right back up into the range. This was a significant candle, and what was the end result of it? A deviation, a drop, and a reversal back into the range. Okay, let's look at the most current price action. This was the drop of the century, guys, right? Everyone's talking about how this is the drop to end all drops. Abandon hope, abandon all ship. Look at this volume. This is pathetic. It is pathetically low. If this is the drop of all drops, I would expect this level of volume, but you don't. You have this instead. The volume profile does not match a massive, massive drop like what a lot of people are calling for, okay? And this triangle has already played out, right? We've already seen this triangle has already happened. And yet the volume's just not there, guys. So because of that, how can you possibly tell me that it's that significant? I don't think you can. I honestly don't. So until we get more volume on this, I cannot say that this is actually a drop that's going to have any substance. So volume profile is extremely important, and that is my number 7 reason as to why I do not think Bitcoin is done. So on to number 8. Okay, and this one's going to be a low time frame analysis. So on the low time frame, what you want to do is you want to try to annotate which lows have been swept. And sweeping lows is actually a very important thing to understand. That's 1 low, that's 2 lows, that's 3 lows. The only other low we have is way down here at 3,095 because all these other ones are actual wicks to the downside. Everything else really isn't here. And this one as well. I like this as well. All right, so these are our main lows that have been swept. Now, what does sweeping mean, or what is the significance of it? Basically, a sweep is, or a low is formed whenever a drop happens and it pops to the upside, right? That means there's significant support here. Well, since there's significant support there, a lot of people will actually place their stop losses at the bottom of this low. At this low, they'll place their stop losses, or they will actually enter a short position when this low gets lost. Okay, it's a very common strategy. So they probably have stop losses placed there, or they have their stop losses placed there, stop losses placed there, stop losses placed there, and especially right here. Okay, lots of stop losses get put here. Furthermore, a lot of people enter short positions here. Well, as you guys can see, it came down here and tapped this low, came down here and dropped through all three of these lows and activated all those stop losses. Now, what whales will do is they will actually they will push the price down and activate those stop losses simply so that people will enter those short positions, or they will sell what they have, doing the panic sells, just so that they can buy those coins really, really cheap. Okay, so people will sell all their stuff, but the whales will place their bids right there, so all their orders get filled, and they can push the price right back up. And that's what we're seeing right here, guys. These are sweep of these lows, and the price is pushing back up. Now we have dropped a decent amount since this video started, but understand that this still, nothing has changed here. Look, there's still no volume on this movement, guys. Even now, there's still no volume. I'm not convinced this is a drop that's going to have any sort of significance at all. I think this game is going to reverse right back up simply because our volume profile does not show it, okay? But these sweeps are extremely bullish, and because it's bullish, I have, like, guys, like, this to me is one massive bear trap, and I think it's going to shoot to the upside and completely blow people's mind. That's my expectation. So, yeah, those are my 8 reasons, guys. I really do hope you guys enjoy this video. I really hope we have a really good comments and discussions in the video. If you agree with me, leave a comment. If you disagree with me, leave a comment. I want to hear your guys' cases. So make sure to do so. I have a Discord in the description. Make sure to check that out. I'll keep you guys up to date there. I got a Twitter and all this other really, really good stuff. So yeah, if you have any questions, let me know, and I will see you guys in the next video. So deuces, boys.